Welcome to the Blockbusters and Birdwalks podcast. I am the curator, Garrett Chaffin-Quiray. Today we have a conversation with a friend.
This is Ed Rosa, bon vivant, professional simpleton, and you can check out my and our work on youtube.com at Toothless Richard Productions. This is Gateway Cinema, episode 13, editing, and we're discussing Crank and Crank High Voltage.
You and I, and all living creatures, are mosaics. We are the expressed result of two adults making a baby. And the third thing can never be fully anticipated until the combination of the first two. That's the frame I like to think about when I really consider closely the value of movie editing. Footage is a term that I've heard you use.
Yes.
Footage is just raw material. Raw material is something you don't want to share with anybody. The refinement is what you want to share with somebody. And that refinement involves the collision of unlike things. One shot leads to another shot, perhaps 10,000 deep in a feature movie that's very busy, as today's movies are very busy.
Yeah.
And the result is performance, is humor, is tragedy, is mood, all of the stuff that makes movie entertainment, indeed movie art, possible. The mosaic. Now, the other thing to highlight in this particular episode of Gateway Cinema is we're doing a double feature. And I want to emphasize the value of that from two angles. One is that a double feature is an old exhibition strategy to give the appeal of value to the movie consumer. You pay one admission price and you get two features. That was really modeled during the Depression years leading into World War II and has then become not a convention but sometimes used in discount theaters all the way through our present.
Yeah, oh yeah.
On the other side, the double feature is a way for large studios with a lot of product that they make to give an opportunity for something that's less valuable to them as a commodity. They have parked fewer resources, whether it's money or talent, into making a thing, and a so-called A movie. They attach that to a B movie that has less material associated with it, less value, younger stars, less resource, and place them out of the marketplace together. That was a testing ground, again, 70, 80 years ago, to define the value of new stars, new genre conventions that were being monkeyed with in a given studio or whatever it may be. But as we flash into the present, the double feature largely today is just streaming media.
Yeah.
The whole of the streamers is mostly devoted to B movies.
Right.
The second half of the double feature.
Right.
Because most of it is entertaining and pleasant enough, but mostly forgettable and sometimes quite bad. And that has reserved the space for exhibition spaces today to showcase the A-level material. As we talk in October 2025, the world is quite excited about One Battle After Another, which is an A-level production. But there's a lot of stuff happening that are B-level productions out on the streamers that I'm hearing people chatter about as well, as if they're equal. They're not. and that was, at one point, what a double feature was. Lesser material produced for less time, less value, attached to greater material in the hopes that the bigger thing would drag along the younger thing, and the younger thing might on its own develop an audience. So, double feature. You said, let's watch Crank together. I know who Jason Statham is.
Yes.
And while I have my lunch sandwich each day, and sometimes I watch violent shorts on YouTube, I have been fed excerpts of Crank over the years. I didn't know it was Crank until you put these in front of me, and now I put it all together.
Okay.
I've been watching bits of Crank over time, just the violent bits.
Right.
There's plenty of them.
Yes.
But I have to tell you, when we were beginning this Gateway Cinema project, I didn't imagine that we were going to run aground of this action movie.
Ah, okay.
And then that we would agree to do a double feature for both versions, the Cranks.
Yes.
If they should ever make a Crank 3, it should be called The Crankiest.
Yeah. For me, I consider Crank and Crank High Voltage, for me, are kind of like Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2. They're really just two halves of the same movie. You know, I know a lot of people that liked Crank were totally disappointed with Crank High Voltage. I was not. So that's one thing, is that I really do consider them to be two halves of the same coin.
So seeing them attached in the way that we've watched them is perfectly correct. Because,
yeah.
And of course, the lead character's life story, so to speak, does bridge instantly with just a time ellipses, which we watch in movies all the time.
Right.
It's perfectly acceptable. So if you put this all together and watch 3 hours of Crank, you'd have the complete vision.
Yeah. Well, and also, too, I guess this isn't necessarily so much with this, but there is added value in the double feature in that when programmed correctly, like two movies together like this, they can shed light on each other. For example, when we've talked about before, like the double feature, and I know Night and Fog is only 30 minutes, but the double feature of Salo and Night and Fog. That's a pretty heavy,
double feature,
right?
Bring the popcorn.
I guess in that case, thankfully, Night and Fog is only half an hour. But watching Night and Fog immediately at the conclusion of Salo provides immediate context of kind of what it seems like Pasolini was kind of getting at with what he was doing with Salo. When we hear, talk of the concentration camps and these people that are just fodder for their oppressors to do with as they please, all of a sudden, like, what's happening in Salo, like, makes, like, more sense. So, two proper films booked together can actually augment each other.
I think that's perfectly correct. And you're aware of my history as a movie teacher. The double features that I sort of imagine for myself and for my student experience is often I can't actually give them a double feature because there's a limit to a class time.
Right.
But if you bridge 1 week's class to the next and can sort of erase the 160 hours in between them, you would kind of have this feel that there's a contrapuntal experience.
Right.
A position is staked, and then the next experience reverses or disorders or complicates what we earlier saw.
Right.
And when that's done to a strategy, it can be quite marvelous.
Yeah. Amadeus and Marie Antoinette would
they
honestly
do speak to
be
each other, right.
an effective double feature.
I didn't
for
anticipate
example.
that when we've established our list, but you're exactly right.
Right.
Sometimes I think that the value of these kinds of connections, these contrasts, these sympathies, they're not always explicitly known to us. It's sometimes what is the element that is reducing me to tears in a particular creative expression I really respond to, and then something else in my life puts me into memory space, and I go, this is like it, but I don't know why.
Right.
And then you enjam them, just like poets do, to kind of create a mood and a tonal distinction between two different lines in their verse, and boom, suddenly these things that don't seem to have any relationship are immediately so available to one another.
Right.
That can only happen when we have different things colliding. And though this is the same basic cast and the same basic crew, these two movies, Crank and Crank High Voltage, there is a distinction between them that I want to just sort of clean up before we reverse and talk about the movies.
Okay.
The distinction is, this movie is basically the derivation of a pubescent boy imagining all the exciting things that he really enjoys, and he's heterosexual. Let's make sure that that's fully in front of us.
Right.
Because this movie is softcore porn combined with terrible violence, complete action orientation, and complete disinterest in being soft or caring of other people's feelings. The sequel takes all of that and adds to it the value of web-based tools and technologies, video gaming, and just raw noise to punish us and expand all of those earlier incidences of softcore porn and violence and all of the rest, and make it even more dramatically intense and gross and repugnant and disgusting, but then also funny.
Yeah. It seems to be that Neville, Dean, and Taylor were like, well, if we're going to do another one of these, everything needs to be cranked up. Pun intended or not intended, I guess.
Yeah.
So and so it is like everything that's so over the top in Crank is even more over the top in Crank High Voltage.
Because Crank is a nickname for drugs. In particular, it's for
methamphetamine.
meth, right? Yeah. And Crank is also a pejorative term, and also
it's a word I used to refer to Charles Grodin. Or Dennis Miller now.
Correct. It's also a synonym for a prick or a dick or a penis.
Yes.
The point of this movie, bald, bigoted Brit, who is a hitman, as a pawn between two warring gang functionaries. He isn't a power grab between them, and they try to murder him, but they can't. And so he kills everybody.
Right.
End of movie 1.
Right.
Movie 2, we repeat.
Right.
And he's got a girlfriend.
Yes.
And he seems to be very sexually passionate about her, and for some reason she's very excited about him, although he's a real louse and treats her badly.
Well, yeah,
but he does seem devoted, and he kills people to save her.
Yeah, it's funny, because you would think, I mean, I'm not a woman, so I don't know how women think, but, like, I think that women would think that, like, somebody who would kill somebody or beat somebody into the hospital, that's bad news, and I don't want to deal with that.
And it's a total aphrodisiac for this one, played by Amy Smart. She's really in to the Statham machine. So the Statham machine. I've been aware of him, I guess like most of us have, for probably 15 years or so. I think I really paid attention to him after these movies were released. because he seems to make an action movie about every 6 to 12 months. Some of them become quite prominent in the sort of popular culture, like The Meg.
I didn't see the first one, but I did see the second one.
And they're sort of uniformly lousy, dumb, bad, embarrassing movies. However, I'll watch them.
He's extraordinarily likable, and his presence will make me, more willing to sit through something I might otherwise just write off. There's just something very, magnetic and likable about Jason Statham. In fact, to the point where, I don't really like most of his movies, and that's one of the reasons I flipped over Crank and Crank High Voltage, because I was like, okay, finally, awesome. This is finally something that, he's in that I love, and I can love him in it, and, without, shame.
The dude's really foxy handsome. He is the kind of masculinity that physically I happen to respond to. I think he's a former Olympic-level diver for the British national team. I don't know if he actually went to the big games, but he was close to that level.
Okay.
An exquisite athlete who turned that grace and physical control into a career as, I think, a model and also an actor. Mm-hmm. Most all of his movies feature a terrific amount of stunt work and physical movement. Mm-hmm. And in this movie, it was partly promoted by the fact that he does the stunt work. He's like Tommy Cruise.
Yeah,
he does his own stuff.
Right.
He's not a large man. I mean, he's not 1,000 feet tall and weighs 300 pounds. He looks to be 5'8", maybe, on a good day, and the dude is just ripped down to being pure muscle. So when he periodically has his clothes stripped from him to do an action scene, thank you, producers, I'm so grateful, he looks terrific.
Right.
The thing is, he grumbles his way through this role, and he's stern and angry the whole time. I know that that's an unusual thing because in life, when he's interviewed, he's in a loving marriage, it appears. He's become a father in the years since. He does seem to be a warm person, and there are outtakes shown at the ends of these movies of the mistakes with the stunt work or whatever. And when he smiles, it's a huge, winning, personable smile. But he doesn't do that in this movie.
Right, yeah.
He just grimaces and grits his teeth and then beats people to death and shoots them. And it's consequence-free violence. I guess that's something I also want to emphasize. The value of a 12-year-old's imagination is that the real-world ickiness of what happens when people are hurt, what happens when you're sexually aroused, what happens when you cause injury or insult, none of that sticks to them because they're not imagining that happening to them.
Right.
It's just out there, very much like a video game.
Right.
And I suspect that a video game is an important intertext to how these movies are assembled because there's such a jumble of frequent noise.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a bunch of references to different games in them.
Well, and you're constantly leveling up. You killed 3 guys, next time you got to kill 6.
Yeah. And then even some of the visual effect shots or like the opening of Crank High Voltage where we have sort of the 8-bit video game graphics stylized, the heart, and then the little punch up between Chelios and Ricky Verona on the way out of the helicopter,
falling to earth, right? To conclude the movie.
Their follow up, they did that movie Gamer with Gerard Butler. It's just very clear for these guys that they grew up as gamers.
And it plays value in how fast everything moves, which I think is a reason why you're pivoting this discussion on editing to this movie. Often we think of editing as, well, okay, I'm a person who's soon going to give a lecture on Soviet montage theory and the different styles of montage laid out by
the Odessa steps?
Sure, that's exactly what I'm going to show. In fact, I'm going to show the entire Battleship Potemkin
Okay, nice.
to make evident what this means.
Love that movie.
We tend to think of that as an exceptional device that's used irregularly because when you notice editing, of course, that suggests that there is an editor and it blows the escapist value of what we often think of as important in a screen movie. The story should just flow from motivated characters doing their thing, having heated arguments, talking with one another, making love with one another, running from one another. But all of that motivates one cut to the next because we're watching a person go streaming across the screen. But when we edit something in an extraordinary way, we're noticing that the temporal design is shifting how time works. Well, Crank and Crank 2 shift how time works just sort of constantly. There are also so many cuts. So many.
Right.
A different way to think of this. When I was first getting hip to the techniques, the craft of movies back in the 90s, I didn't worry so much about things like aspect ratio, shooting ratio, cuts per second, cuts per minute. But I began to think about that. And one of the really useful exercises I can remember hating at the time was taking a segment of a movie that I liked. You pick your movie, it doesn't really matter. And you just count the number of shots in that sequence to know how much material was made. What was the coverage to set up this scene that you're so attached to? And when you do that, it removes the illusion. You're like, oh, well, that was 30 different cuts involving 6 different setups, and each of those probably required 15 to 30 takes. And then you, oh my God, the math. That 5 minutes took 3 hours of material.
Right.
Oh my God, that's a lot. And then you go make a movie. And, oh geez, this takes so much effort.
Yeah.
Because my actors can't remember their lines. They're keeping fly over airplanes. My camera's unsteady because it actually registered my heart beating. Whatever.
Yeah. Nothing but problems.
Nothing but problems. So editing is where you clean up all that garbage.
Or at least you try to.
You try to. With a movie like this, I think the logic of having a sustained take is not at all what is interesting to these filmmakers.
No. In fact, it's funny because, I do pay attention, because long takes are something that's kind of not really in fashion. And I think if you look at, editing over, the past 100 years or whatever, the average length between cuts in a movie is, it gets, shorter and shorter.
That's right.
The further we go along. So, we were just talking about with P.T. Anderson, one battle after another, he got some nice long takes in there. But those kind of long takes would, neuter something like this that is just so sort of frenetic and hyperkinetic.
And it depends on that. If it has all of that energy, it can sustain the ludicrousness of its story and help us buy into how's he going to solve this dilemma. The genius of this movie's construction, and it's also, as I say, the 12-year-old's imagination, the limitation of it. I tried describing this movie to my wife before I drove over here.
Right.
And she looked at me like, are you serious? Because that sounds both like the biggest waste of time ever, but also probably some of the best entertainment you've had this year.
Exactly. That's when I first saw this. When I saw the trailer, I was like, oh man, that looks really stupid.
Right.
All right, you know what? I do like Jason Statham. Let me give it a chance. And then, okay, is it dumb? I guess so. It's also just when it comes to entertainment value, bang for the buck.
So Chelios, as we open Crank, has been drugged with a poison that will kill him.
Yeah.
And he's in touch with some kind of mob cardiac surgeon.
Which is dumb to begin with, because, you want him dead, so it's Mr. Bond, before I kill you, let me explain.
And call speed dial if you want medical advice.
Right.
And it's Dwight Yoakam, so that's fantastic.
It was super cool. But, they didn't just kill him outright, huh?
Right.
They,
make this whole thing of let him suffer for a while.
So that's dumb to begin with, but awesome.
But they can push the poison back, and he can stay alive if he can keep juicing his adrenaline, keep getting his body excited. And so if that means he's got to pop cocaine, if that means he's got to take other uppers, if that means he has to go through incredible physical stress, he has to get into a fight, he has to have sex. All of these things occupy him to keep himself alive. And so every few minutes he's got to do something to dose himself or he's going to die. So the movie sustains itself by complete action and then a drift off as he begins to die a little bit.
Right.
And then a bunch of action, and he starts to die off a little bit.
Right.
And that tension is kind of a perfect mechanism to put the Statham machine in motion, because he's beautiful to watch.
Yeah.
He's a great runner. He's got terrific balance. He throws himself around really convincingly.
I'm convinced he was delivered by a cesarean section based on the flawless shape of his skull.
It is a perfect little skull.
And also, it seems I don't know if he's actually bald, because it looks like he's got stubble everywhere. So that too, that takes cojones to
get
no, I got a full head of hair, but you know what? I'm just gonna bake it off all the time.
And then all of that is in contrast to the baddies who want to bring him down, whether they are this Latino gang or they're the triad, whatever. It's just a lot of disposable people who are disposed of rather quickly. We don't linger over their pain or anguish. We just watch them get sprayed against a wall.
Yeah,
and he's got to proceed to the next upper to keep himself going until finally he can do something about this poison going through his body. Bottom line, spoiler, in the end, he's able to roll up the whole gang that tried to hurt him, including the main guy who did this to him. And they fall out of a helicopter together. He's able to make sure he kills everybody, but he's going to die himself, falling from the helicopter. Calls his girlfriend, leaves a message, I love you.
And there's a really calm moment, too, right before, as after he's disposed of Ricky Verona.
Right.
And just to his final descent down into the streets of Los Angeles.
Then he crashes onto a car, bounces off of it, and slaps the pavement. But then he blinks. He's not really dead.
Yeah, and they sit on that for a few before he blinks. It's real tasteful.
There's no splatter. He's just... Okay, so the second movie kicks off with the fact that this poison and this man, for some reason, have combined to make kind of a superhuman.
Yeah.
And he's been captured, and he's been revitalized, so his body can be harvested organ by organ, including his penis.
Yeah, Superman penis.
He's a horse dick, apparently. At least that's the logic of a 12-year-old imagining a superhero star. So his heart has been taken from him, and it's been placed into David Carradine's chest, who is characterized as a 100-plus-year-old Chinese man, but he's there with Mickey Rooney Chompers being the worst stereotype of a Chinese man when we finally meet him. So the journey of High Voltage is he wants to go recover his great heart for the artificial device that's keeping him alive so the rest of him can be harvested, including his penis. And he's got to fight his way through Los Angeles. Both movies are set in and shot in real Los Angeles. Until finally he reaches the conclusion of the movie, which arguably is what happens because at the end of this movie, High Voltage, it appears he's dead, but then he's not.
He's Chev Chelios.
So there's reason for us to believe that one day Jason Statham, maybe with his walker at age 70, will come out of retirement for the role, bring his sharks and all of the rest of his career to bear on Crank 3. So I said all of these things to the missus as I suggested, and she just thought, I can't believe it. It's like when we met and we were teenagers. You're that dork. The smelly little kid learning to shave his face is all excited about nonsense. Indeed, it is exciting nonsense.
Yeah.
But when we really think about the techniques of editing, how you enjam these images, what are some of the things that you notice in this movie that just gin up the excitement?
We've got non-linear editing where we've got sort of flashbacks that just come like little ones that come out of nowhere. We've got time-lapse stuff. Stuff's either really sped up or like it'll be slowed down. We have like picture-in-picture a couple of times where at one point when he's running through a hallway and he's talking to Doc Miles on the phone, instead of cutting between the two, we briefly have the shot of Doc Miles on the wall in the corridor he's running down while he's talking to him.
Right.
A lot of different like split screen techniques.
Right.
Two halves, and then we split into four, and then like two of them will like roll over.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of crazy wipes. I'm thinking of one scene when he's like running down the street really fast, and the camera does this. It's almost like a tremolo a pedal does for like a guitar, where it's like just this real choppy. It's
vibration.
Like they're dropping some frames or something. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
But you know,
it's jittery and it looks weird, but it creates tension because visually I'm confused but stimulated.
I don't. Like a lot of times, you know, with movies, it's like, okay, you know, you've got your script, you got your story, you know how it's going, how your story is going to be told, but oftentimes, then when you're, you know, editing, you make some changes. You know, you have a take that, you know, is like, you know, better than others, even though it's not the one you thought you wanted, or it turns out that while in the script this happens here and you know, A happens here and B happens here. Well, actually, if we take B and we move it back here 5 minutes, like Godfather 3, the coda is a perfect example of this. Godfather 3 is not terrible. It's not on par with 1 or 2, but then years later, Coppola goes back and re-edits it and re-releases it as a Godfather coda, and oh my goodness, it makes more sense now. Yeah. And it's actually a better cut of the film, but he moved stuff around, temporally speaking. But with these movies, I don't know how editing wasn't one of the top things on their mind when they're trying to visualize this. Like, I can't believe they just shot this thing like normal and then just did all this, like, thought of all this stuff, like, in the editing room. You know what I mean?
I read, and this probably has to do with the visual fluency of it. Many of the effects that you just described are things that I think a younger person who's grown up in the iPhone age just knows are natural transition effects built into the software, rather than celluloid-based, really intense bits of engineering, science, and art to make these things mechanically possible, which was really difficult to do. Even up through the 90s when I was being trained on old-fashioned film, it was very difficult to do a dissolve. I point that out because this movie was shot on digital. And the filmmakers each armed themselves with cameras.
Yeah, they're the camera operators.
Right. And so they had a DP kind of laying out what's going to happen and how it's going to move, but then they were there with coverage on everything, which seems apparent in many of the most exciting action sequences of this. The cuts that are inserting different bits of action, whether it's a bad guy chasing him, to then him shooting back at the bad guy, to then his girlfriend hopping into a car, to some other bad guys, to something overhead. It just demands so many cameras simultaneously covering the action. This is not a terribly expensive movie. So although there's a fair amount of mayhem, they do demolish a lot of cars. But the trouble is, once you demolish a car, you can't use it again.
Right.
So you need to demolish it with all of your cameras on
On
that
it.
car.
Yeah.
And that means you got lots of stuff to choose from. And that can paper the cracks when your actor forgets their line of dialogue. Or as you were saying, like you think while you're shooting it, this is going to be fantastic, but the eye line doesn't match because the character's looking to the right, they need to look to the left, so you cut away on the mistake and you insert a bad guy running towards them.
Right.
Boom! Now you've got a sense of style. It doesn't necessarily cohere with a theme or a vision. It's not auteurist, because I don't think this movie has that going for it, but it's such visual panache, so much movement, and it's so fast. It would be a hell of an exercise to make people go through a sequence of excitement in this and count the shots.
Yeah. And just the way, how was it storyboarded?
Well,
you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
everything just seems so precise and so intentional, but there's so much of it, and it's so hectic.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even know where to begin trying to describe. Like if I saw one of these, sequences in my head, I wouldn't even know how to describe to anybody what I was visualizing.
Yeah.
And yet they've done it for 2 entire films.
I'm late to the game of comic books and of graphic novels, but I have become appreciative of what that art form is. And it is the paneling of three-dimensional space as a two-dimensional exercise that you then have to do the mental work of imagining the parts moving. And then you see them ripped apart by unusual panel work, and it blows your mind.
Right.
I'm imagining that this movie was probably organized in that fashion, and then the transitions between panel to panel. In other words, they knew where the camera needed to sit for certain shots they had to get. But as far as going from shot A to shot B, a lot of possibilities presented when you got 5 cameras running all at once. Because any one of them might pick up a detail that's kind of interesting. And because it's done with digital arts, a camera and also the software on the backside, what caught my attention in this is there's a lot of push-ins.
Yeah.
So,
a lot of crash zooms.
Right. And that can be done on site if you're fast enough to do it, but you don't have to. You can do it in software later. So he's driving a car and it's very exciting. So you crash into his face really fast, like partial second. The energy created by that. And then you can cut to something else and you're juiced. When we think about movies that are more sedate, that are more organized around the principles of motivated character exercise versus the semi-randomness of this.
Yeah, this is like the anti-Terrence Malick.
That's correct. Yeah, this is just, we have a buffet.
Right.
So scoop this, scoop that, keep scooping until we've larded the plate full of stuff. And sometimes it's overwhelming and you kind of like, this is too much. But then because it's from a 12-year-old boy's perspective, then you have, a through and through bloodshot. Oh, that's cool. Then you have some topless woman walk by. Oh my gosh, go back to that. Right. And you never quite gather all of the detail, and you never quite fill out the entire context of the movie. And fortunately, it's not complex enough to demand that.
Right.
It is just the thrill.
Yeah. Yeah, the style is the substance, really.
Entirely. Now, the substance... It's fortunately for Crank only 87 minutes long, and fully 5 minutes of that is the credits, which are remarkable all on their own just for listening to the soundtrack.
Yep.
Because the soundtrack, like the visual track, is equally busy and on purpose
Absolutely.
overwhelming.
That's another thing that's sort of just another detail that enhances my enjoyment of these films. So with the first film, you had a score, but most of the music was like needle drop stuff. In fact, San Diego's own Rocket from the Crypt, their song Bring Us Bullets is the one that plays over the end credits as soon as the end credits start. And every song is like perfectly chosen. Even when Loverboy Turn Me Loose. Loverboy has never sounded cooler, but with High Voltage, they hired Mike Patton to do the score, which, as we've discussed, I'm a huge fan of his, and he's done a handful of movies, but his score for Crank High Voltage is perfect. That too takes it up another notch when you get to that second half, because he somehow has managed to create this score that's as hyperkinetic and crazy as the film itself is.
one dividend that comes from that, the attachment of these filmmakers to that musician and musicians more generally, is there are interesting cameos that just
tons of cool ones. Yeah,
Chester Bennington.
Yeah, he's in both.
Right. He's now gone and he's left us through suicide. But there he is in each movie, being this goofball, just kind of literally rubbing up against Jason Statham.
Yeah,
it's kind of a marvel. That sense of an underground culture beneath the represented culture of movies and of music and of video games, because these are all touchstones for this movie.
Yeah.
But the porn culture brings itself up.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
In the second
High
movie.
Voltage, yeah. We actually see,
porn actors on strike.
Right. For some bizarre reason.
Including the likes of Ron Jeremy and Lexington Steele.
Nick Manning, I think, is the dropping loads guy. I know that because Howard Stern, the whole, dropping loads, that was a whole thing for Howard Stern. And then, Keith Jardine shows up briefly in that movie, and he's a UFC fighter. He's an MMA guy.
You even get, so-called, quote, straight actors, like Lauren Holly shows up as a therapist. You get Glenn Howerton.
Glenn Howerton in both, yeah.
Right, and these are just kind of, they're grasping at the straws of possible references, but again, a 12-year-old boy's imagination, having been a 12-year-old boy, I know this. This is me in the 80s, right? I'm like Pac-Man Gallagher.
And everybody in it is really good too. In particular, I want to note the guy that plays Ricky Verona, Jose Pablo Cantillo. This guy is awesome. I don't know how that guy isn't in everything. He's so pissed off at Chev Chelios.
There's this how do I say it? These performers are fully committed to the ridiculousness of this movie, and because of that, it's like it transcends its actual quality of being vulgar ridiculousness. It doesn't become great art, but it becomes a really sophisticated bit of dark humor, because they know that if we're hip to it, they know that we know that they know this is ridiculous, but they're going to play it all the way through.
Right, absolutely.
And Verona is like that.
Yeah.
All the way until I am a pancake on the asphalt of Los Angeles falling from a helicopter. All the way through that point, I'm going to submit to the logic of this weird, I'm going to poison this guy for mob manipulation reasons and not be able to kill him afterwards when he decides he's going to come kill me.
Right.
What? And then he shows up winningly in the sequel. His head has been kept alive
Which is
by
one
his
of the
rich
most
brother.
Bonkers turns.
It is
and because by this point in the film, you're Chev Chelios survived, but you weren't expecting that Ricky Verona was going to turn up at this point. But then Clifton Collins
plays their other brother, who is not announced, who's richer than his brothers who are dispatched in the first movie.
Right, and
now that actor, Clifton Collins Jr., you're talking about great screen actors who haven't received their due. Even in this really dumb part, even in the excesses of it, the wig and the costume, I mean, he's taking Pacino's part from Scarface, and he's just doing it up bigger on, I presume, some Malibu estate they got the permission to go shoot on. It's just crazy wealth and views for miles.
It's like a rap video from
That's
the late
exactly
90s, early
correct.
2000s.
That was a reference I wanted to bring up, because I can remember there was a moment when pornography made direct inroads into the music video business to bring their starlets on contract and place them alongside the likes of Snoop Dogg to be topless or to be fornicating in the background while he's rapping over his latest song drop. And I think that only went on for so long because a lot of those musical artists were multimillionaires and didn't want to necessarily do this and tarnish their brand. I mean, after all, Snoop Dogg is announcing the Olympics for all.
Yeah,
he's a grandpa.
Well, but he is a bit of an outlier.
Well, he's exceptional.
Most rappers do not have the kind of longevity.
That's true, right?
He's found a way to
stretch
go beyond just the records and become just sort of a pop cultural icon. Pretty remarkable what he's been able to do.
These wealthy men, they hang out and they drink and they smoke cigars and they have these wonderful clothes that are sort of, it looks like Miami Vice production design everywhere, and then they just have all these women lounging around them in various stages of dress and undress, doing nothing but just waiting to be looked at, or I guess to be mustered over for sex. And some of that kind of happens, but mostly it's just a set that makes no sense whatsoever.
Right.
And God bless it, because 12-year-old Garrett would have just thought this is the greatest movie in the history of the world.
Naked girls in plexiglass bubbles.
Right.
Okay.
and
whatever.
Then suddenly just violence jumps off and people are dying every which way. There's a stupid scene in a strip club in High Voltage when a woman who's got artificial breasts is shot through and through, and we watch her breasts deflate.
Right.
That's to give you an impression of like the sense of humor in this. And if what I've just said is offensive to you, dear listener, in any way, this is not a movie for you. But
Right.
if that makes you laugh, this is maybe something to go pull off the shelf. But Clifton Collins Jr., he's an actor with dozens and dozens of credits. His ethnic background, I forget right now, but it's pliant enough because he has light brown skin. He can play virtually all brown skin ethnicities as necessary. He delivers his lines with a snarl, but I noticed in this movie, and it probably had to do with those multiple cameras on a performer as they're kind of running through the lines. Okay, give me your line read. And he gives the line read. Okay, go bigger. He goes bigger. Go bigger again. Go bigger. Okay, do it your own way. And then you just let him burn off his steam, and he starts just gesturing and doing stuff with his hands.
Right.
And like those little inserts of him just doing stuff with his hands, they're magnificent.
Yeah.
And they just get stuffed into things at odd angles, unrelated. They're inserts for Chelios grumbling his way through his dialogue, or other heavies, pumping their shotguns to be menacing. And then suddenly, there he is, throwing his hands around.
Right.
Just inserted over the top of this because there are so many shots. You are being bombarded as surely as a shotgun blast of pellets is hitting you against a wall. This movie is just going for too much.
Right.
It achieves. I mean, it's overwhelming. And to its credit, there are a couple of spots where it does slow down just briefly.
Which is really smart because obviously, they're keeping you pretty close to 10 the whole time.
Yeah, right.
But they seem to know like exactly the right moments to bring it down for a second, but never for too long.
There's an exquisitely funny thing that happens when there's a recurring joke. I told this to the missus. She couldn't believe what I was saying. You're inventing this right now in front of me, husband. No, I'm not. One of the ways he can get the blood flowing and get his adrenaline up is to have sex. I mentioned that. So he mounts his girlfriend in Chinatown, Los Angeles, from behind on a newsstand while crowds of tourists cheer.
They're
and
into
he makes the local news.
They're into it.
And then he takes a phone call, pounding her.
Yeah.
And as she's entering orgasmic throes, he stops to talk through the phone call because it gives him a clue on how he can juice himself up and solve the dilemma that he's in.
Right.
And off he goes running away.
Well, the last thing he needs in that moment is to ejaculate. That's like
it would relax him.
That'd be like instant death.
It would be the little death.
You can't. You can't do that. So he's fortunate, and if she cares about him, even though she was mad at him in the moment,
she's like, "Oh, I'm helping you,
that
hon."
was like if there was ever a time to leave her hanging.
And then again, the 12-year-old's logic in the sequel. 3 months have passed between the first movie's conclusion and the second movie's point of origin for the new story, while he's been comatose and being recuperated for organ harvesting.
Right.
So when he wakes up and stumbles his way into a strip club, his girlfriend has been turned out. She's now a stripper.
Right.
With a stage
named Lemon. Wait, Corey Haim is like her pimp or whatever.
Corey friggin'
and
Haim.
what's gonna be his coolest role since License to Drive or
Lost Boys. Yeah, this gigantic silly mullet. And later in this movie, in High Voltage, again, Chelios is starting to unwind, and he needs the juice of the friction that's possible from closely rubbing somebody. And they start to make out at Santa Anita racetrack. They stumble off of the stands into the racetrack.
Yeah, first he's rubbing up on some old woman.
After Chester Bennington's arm.
Right.
And then they stumble out onto the field and begin having sex. So explicitly that they blur out their sex organs while the horses, the ponies, are rounding the bend.
Right.
And they near climax.
And while she is achieving her climax, a horse jumps over them, and we're literally looking at the horse's dick.
And she's aroused by... The whole thing is so directly blunt. It's so unsophisticated. It's so 12.
Yeah, it's really over the top.
Another movie that's recently been in the conversation nationally is the reboot of the Naked Gun series.
Yes.
And consequently, that's been something that I have had conversations with strangers. Have you seen Naked Gun? No, but I remember the original one and its sequels.
Right.
And the original one and its sequels happened when I was the 12-year-old boy fantasizing about the sex I wasn't having, about the violence I wish I could get away with, the violence I wish I could dish out because I felt I was so unstrung I wanted to have this false front. So these movies are this fantasy fulfillment of stupid behavior that is not acceptable in actual life, but is so gratifyingly enjoyable to a kind of an audience member.
Right.
And I'm old enough now to know the kind of person I was and the person that I am, to realize that in some ways I'm the ideal audience. I can tolerate these references while I know that it's filthy and vulgar and profane. All the things you can throw at, all the arrows you can sling. It's nonetheless a kind of great entertainment.
Yeah. So there is a ton here that could offend.
I have plenty of people in my life who would not go for this. I have moods in my life when I can't and don't go for this. But it happened to bump into me at a time when I was open because my buddy Ed said, the cranks are a great way to look at editing, and you are right.
Well, I also thought, too, for a class, like as you know, sometimes it seems like, you know, with the apathy that you have to confront, I was like, okay, this would be a real interesting contrast compared to something like Amadeus, or you know, something else that you would show, The Swimmer, right? Like,
also interesting editorial strategies,
yeah,
but for an entirely different purpose.
Totally.
Yeah.
I can see maybe a lot of students that like ordinarily might kind of tend to like checking out. You know, you roll this, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, now you got their attention.
The great value of this movie as an exhibit of wonderful editing, indeed of various techniques involved in making movies, it showcases film form at a very high-velocity sort of view, which is very, very stressful, very, very exciting, all very purposeful, and the content is completely disagreeable. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That can happen. You, citizen, can just tolerate that.
Right.
Because sometimes what you get is extremely good content and form that's totally traditional, completely conventional, and uninteresting. But the content is so rich, you're struck by the brilliance of the performance or the richness of the words they speak. There's a place for that, too. It doesn't mean that the one is completely superior to the other, although most of us would favor the greater, more substantive content than we would the lack of content and depth. But sometimes the flash of form is really great. We're Americans, after all.
Yeah.
And if you can sell me something exciting, I'll forgive an awful lot.
Yeah.
And Crank and Crank 2 High Voltage are exciting.
Yes.
This is Blockbusters and Birdwalks. I'm the curator, Garrett Chaffin-Quiray.
I'm Ed Rosa, bon vivant and professional simpleton.
Boop boobity doo.